At the time of recording this, I am making my way through a rewatch of Daredevil Season 1. During that process, something had caught my eye: the costume. For 99% of the season, Daredevil isn't wearing what you'd call a traditional superhero costume. He doesn't have the resources to make one, which in a way makes him more endearing, right? Now, when making my fan film, Growing Pains, I took a similar approach to the Spider-Man costume. I tried to anyway. Now, early on, this wasn't the most well-liked decision that I made. Spider-Man didn't look anything like Spider-Man. Spider-Man looked kind of cheap. I admit this was somewhat disheartening at first. I knew I couldn't afford a good movie quality costume, and I also knew I didn't want to run around in a Halloween outfit, as that would likely increase critique of the project looking cheap. The suit in the film was the best I could do at the time. As production went on, the criticism of the outfit bothered me less and less, as this very bare bones take on the costume ended up informing my reimagining of the character. I remember years ago now, when I was still writing the movie, like getting the drafts together, conceptualizing what I wanted the film to look like. And during those early days, I was pulling influence from Batman Begins and of course Daredevil Season 1, like I mentioned earlier. I wanted my take on Spider-Man to have a similar tone and aesthetic to those other superhero projects. And with those sort of ideas in mind, the costume or the outfit, whatever you want to call it, that Spider-Man wears in the film was made to fit into that tone, that aesthetic, and hopefully that came across in the final project. So circling back to what I said about the costume informing this reimagining of the character. During the writing phase, I was taking my cues from the early Stan Lee, Steve Ditko issues of Amazing Spider-Man and the Ultimate Spider-Man line of books from the 2000s. So my version of Peter Parker was yet to become the friendly neighborhood hero that most are familiar with. He's bitter, he's angry, most importantly he's a vigilante before he's a superhero. He's using Spider-Man as an unhealthy coping mechanism, and the lesson of responsibility hasn't sunk in yet. The costume is purely a reflection of this characterization for Peter. It's scary and it serves its purpose as a disguise because that's all it's meant to be in this phase of Peter Parker's journey. In terms of outside of the Spider-Man persona, a lot of thought was put into Peter Parker's fashion sense. I really wanted him to stand out from other takes and interpretations of the character. So what I opted for was this Kurt Cobain grunge-inspired look. Now keeping that in mind, I also didn't want to lose Peter Parker from the comics. I didn't want it to be completely unrecognizable. Pre-Uncle Ben's death, Peter has the nerdier early 616 style, and post-Uncle Ben's death is when the darker, unkempt, edgier grunge look became, that's where that comes in, and it becomes a representation of Peter's mourning of the loss of his uncle. This more broken look for him actually ended up complementing the Spidey suit really well too. Bit of a happy accident there. Eventually this grunge rock style led its way into all other aspects of the film. Next, I'd like to talk about the antagonist of the piece, the Shocker. In the original comic books, the Shocker looks like a walking cushion, and it's fan-fucking-tastic. Now in the Ultimate line of books, those comics, he looks a little more real-world. I knew I wanted some kind of happy balance between these two, but at the same time it had to have some sense of practicality in order to fit in this reimagined Spidey world. For his gauntlets, a change was made from the comic books. Instead of making him the human vibrator, we opted for electricity abilities like he had in the 90s animated show. No, I'm not going to explain the human vibrator part. The outfit became less of a supervillain costume and more of a protective suit, insulated vest, mask, and goggles like a welder. The coat also went a long way in creating an imposing figure. I'm glad the Shocker costume turned out the way it did, because at the time I remember us being really worried about it. Like we were concerned, even with the changes we made, we were concerned that he'd still look goofy somehow. So I think we got really lucky with the final result, and I'm quite proud of it. Finally, another reference to the comics. The suit worn in the final battle was a reference to the Electro-proof costume. Pretty self-explanatory though. But something of note is that the blue colour is more prominent here than on the suit that's seen in most of the film. This mirrors Spider-Man's colour scheme shifting from red and black to red and blue in the source material. If we get lucky enough to progress this Peter Parker story further from here, then him wearing a red and blue suit will represent him becoming more heroic as the adventures continue. Oh, and if anyone's wondering about Montana, you know, key member of the Enforcers, you know, deep pull from the comics there. If anyone's wondering how we came up with his look, well, the actor playing him wanted to look like the fuck's his name, Thomas Shelby from from fucking Peaky Blinders, right? Well, yeah, Shaden, he wanted to look like that, so we went with it. I guess just to sign off here now, if you've somehow watched this and you haven't seen the film yet, it's right here on the channel, so like go give it a look. I hope you enjoy it, and if you have already seen it, then I hope this gave you a new insight into the intentions of the film and the thought process that went into some of the decisions that were made. Following on from that, you know, you've already seen it and now you got new insight. Go watch it again and send it to anyone else you think might be interested. I would appreciate that. Thank you for your time. I'll see you around.